Hello everyone, I'm Windy, and today we are diving into some of the most stereotypical female character tropes and why we shouldn't use them. However, we will also see, if done right, that the difference is all in the execution. I'll break each one down, what it is, what goes wrong, and give you a solid example to show both sides. Let's get started. The strong and independent woman archetype. Classic modernity. We see this very often in modern medias. She's tough, self-reliant, doesn't need help, doesn't cry, and can beat up anyone who gets in her way. On paper, she's meant to be empowering. However, way too often, writer treats strong as a substitute for personality. In result, she becomes flawless, hyper-competent, and emotionally flat. So basically, this is a Mary Sue in feminist writing. And nowadays, people find it very annoying. There is no real arc, no vulnerability, no humanity. Instead of feeling inspiring, she feels hollow and unrelatable. Let's take an example of a famous character, Marinette de Benchain. Marinette's characterization attempts to balance a shy, clumsy teenager with a confident superheroine. As Ladybug, she frequently displays an exceptional competence and leadership, which is great. It is stated in the lore that when a Kwame holder transforms, they tend to hold a different personality. However, as Marinette, her awkwardness and obsessive crush are sometimes treated as endearing quirks rather than genuine flaws. So the core issue lies in her portrayal as a Mary Sue. She barely faces lasting consequences for her action, and the narrative often bends in her favor, especially compared to Adrienne or Cat Noir. Adrienne's development is frequently overshadowed, while Marinette is taking the center stage, and it is very blatant in Season 5. Spoiler alert. Marinette confronts Hawkmoth alone, wielding more powers than Adrienne, which kinda contradicts the whole title. This narrative choice undermines the intended partnership and highlights the disparity in character development. However, the strong female character itself is not a bad thing. Take a look at Toph. She exemplifies how to balance strength with depth. Despite being blind, she becomes a formidable earthbender, developing a unique style inspired by badger moles. Her independence is rooted in her desire to prove herself, not in rejecting help or support. However, Toph isn't without her flaws. She's stubborn, prideful, and sometimes reckless. These imperfections lead to genuine conflict with her friends, and she must grow through them. Over the time, she learns to trust and rely on others without losing her core identity. Toph's character arc is compelling because it demonstrates that strength isn't about being flawless. It's about growth, vulnerability, and the willingness to change. I'm not like the other girls. You know, it's the type of girl that wants to be authentic by rejecting the typical girl things, because it's so boring. She tends to like boyish things. She's quirky, different, and the story uses that as a shorthand for depth. However, it often sends a subtle, or not so subtle, message that being feminine equals bad. Instead of celebrating individuality, it pits women against each other, flattening both types into cliches. It's even worse when it gives the protagonist superiority just for liking different things, not for actually being well written. Think of those teen rom-com protagonists for YA heroines who proudly say, "I don't wear makeup, I read books, and I'm not like those other girls who like shopping, boys, being clubbing, and any other girly things." Their individuality is built entirely on rejecting femininity, not on actual personality or goals. These characters often look down on their peers, and the story backs them up, making femininity the enemy instead of just another valid expression. It's not about who they are, it's about who they're not, which is narratively hollow. In contrary to what I have said, they're actually a good example of not like the other girls trope. Take example to Rapunzel. She embodies a blend of traditionally feminine traits with inner strength and resilience. Raised in isolation with Mother Gothel, she develops artistic talents and a passionate nature. Her curiosity and longing for freedom drive her to escape the tower, demonstrating courage and determination. Through her journey, Rapunzel faces challenges that test her beliefs and values. She learns to navigate relationships, confront her fears, and embrace her true identity. Her growth is marked by a balance between maintaining her kindness and developing a personal agency. Rapunzel's character is compelling because it shows that embracing one's femininity doesn't preclude strength, She becomes a hero not by rejecting who she is, but by fully accepting and evolving into her true self. This one happens when a female character is included just to tick a box. She is the lone girl in a male cast or the diverse sidekick, but she has no real arc, motivation, or impact. The token character feels flat and replaceable. They just exist to make the cast look balanced, not to actually enrich the story. And audiences can tell. It's not just about gender either. Tokenism over intersects with race, sexuality, or background, making it even more glaring when it's lazy. Even so, not every female character needs to be the protagonist. Side characters can be subtle and still be meaningful. The issue isn't limited screen time, it's a lack of intention. If a character exists in the background but has clear traits, goals, or a role that resonates, they can still feel alive. Also, sometimes tokenism happens unintentionally, but keeping a character underdeveloped in a modern context often signals a lack of effort. Let's take an example of April O'Neil in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In the early versions, April is a classic token character. She is the only girl in a boy-heavy cast, mostly functioning as a damsel or exposition machine. Yeah, that's very cliché. But rarely she gets development beyond the reporter who needs saving. She's there, but not there. Despite this, modern adaptation flipped this dynamic completely. April gained martial arts training, personal motivation, and a more active role in the story. She became a real character with goals and flaws, not just a narrative accessory. She supports the main cast, but she's not defined by them. This evolution shows how even a token role can become meaningful if writers are willing to give the character interiority and purpose. This is your classic evil queen, jealous rival, or vain sorceress trope. She's beautiful, cold, manipulative, and evil for the sake of being evil. The pinpoint problems are that when her villainy is only about vanity, jealousy, or pettiness, it reinforces sexist cliches. Male villains get ideologies, tragic pasts, layered motivations, while female villains often get she's jealous and a mirror. It's not just boring, it subtly codes female ambition or power as inherently evil. However, not every villain needs a tragic backstory. Sometimes villains can just be evil. We don't always have to explain their evilness. Sometimes flat villains can work. For example, in mythic or fairy tale context, where archetypes are symbolic. Take a look at the evil queen in Snow White, the 1937 version, not the modern one. She isn't really meant to be very deep and realistic. She is the embodiment of vanity. Where her entire motivation is tied to beauty insecurities and has no deep character development, it still works symbolically, because the 1937 Snow White actually teaches us that the true beauty is from the inside. But when modern stories copy that template without understanding its purpose, it just feels lazy. Of course, it's very cool to make super complex villainess. Take a look at Azula. She is one of the most compelling female villains in animation, and she's also one of my favorite villains. She is a firebending prodigy, manipulative, obsessed with power, and also a skilled strategist. She was raised in an environment that values strength and control, and with the lack of her mother's attention, she internalized these ideals from Ozai to an extreme degree. Her villainy is not born from jealousy or vanity, but from a deep-seated belief in her superiority and a need to maintain control. This belief leads her to manipulate and control those closest to her, including her friends Mei and Tai Li. Azula's downfall is very tragic. Her inability to trust others and her lack of parental love isolate her, leading to her mental unraveling. Her story highlights the dangers of child neglection and the importance of human connection. Azula's character arc is compelling because it demonstrates that female villains can be multidimensional, psychologically rich, and narratively crucial without falling into shadow tropes. She embodies ambition, intelligence, ruthlessness, and her vulnerabilities and fears makes her story tragic and human. Her arc proves that a female villain, or just a villain, can be a fully realized character whose ambition and downfall resonate deeply with the audience. You see, female character tropes aren't inherently bad. The problem arises when they are used lazily, reduced to shorthand, or stripped of depth. The strongest stories happens when writers combine flaws, agency, growth, and consequences, regardless of gender. By examining examples like Marinette, Toph, Rapunzel, April, and Azula, we can see the difference between lazy archetypes and well-rounded, meaningful characters. It's a reminder that complexity, nuance, and intentionality are what makes any character, hero or villain, truly compelling. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and also share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Anyway, so goodbye!